And we're back to talk about more of my recent Super Nintendo pickups on the Retro Hunting Adventures. I'm your host, Mr. MegaManFan, and now for some opening words from my friend Megaran.
Yo, this is MegaManFan, and you need to rock and or roll on over to Mr. MegaManFan's YouTube channel, because it's all that rush to make it happen. Peace!
Our first item up for bid on today's Showcase Showdown is Dirt Track FX, a 1995 release using the same Super FX chip as the legendary Star Fox, and of course, Star Fox 2 if it had actually been released as a physical cartridge back in the day, one of several different games that were powered by Super FX at the time for Nintendo. In fact, this was a point of contention for people who bought the SD to SNES cartridge SD card EverDrive because it was FPGA enabled, meaning that it could support a wide variety of different custom chips that were put inside Super Nintendo cartridges, but those features had to be programmed by Crix or someone working with Crix so that they would be implemented correctly. And he had promised in the future Super FX support would be added, but it took several good long years before that was finally enabled. So until a couple of years ago, I was never able to play games like Dirt Track FX, Star Fox, Yoshi's Island, Doom. Those were all either Super FX or Super FX 2. But once that support was finally enabled, I did a video here on this channel showcasing that Super FX functionality was now a part of SD to SNES, and that functionality has grown rapidly since that time to include chips like the SA1, which powers Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. I wish I could say the Super FX does more to power dirt tracks, but this is not an impressive looking game, not compared to Star Fox, not even compared to other polygonal games of the mid-90s as the PlayStation rose to dominance. It was an attempt by Nintendo to compete with PlayStation to have Super FX enhanced games, but some games benefited from it, others just look janky. And this isn't really much fun to play. You just go around in a circle endlessly, and you're going for the best time each lap you complete, but there's really nothing to stop you. These other racers don't get in your way or knock you down. There are no big jumps you can leap off of and do tricks to have fun. Maybe there is, but I sure haven't found a way to do it. Dirt Tracks FX is not much in demand. It goes for $6 loose, so that Super FX chip is probably being harvested by people who buy it and put it inside Star Fox 2 just to make a working copy of that game that they can load into a Super Nintendo. Though these days, considering SD to SNES has Super FX support, you no longer have to harvest a cartridge just to make a working copy of Star Fox. It's not necessary anymore. That's always been a complaint of people, that rare Super Nintendo games were being harvested to make reproductions, which is why I'm glad things like SD to SNES exist. But then again, I can't even say that Dirt Tracks FX is that rare, given how little it goes for. So your mileage may vary on that debate. As for me, I would say I'm glad to own a physical copy. It looks a little rough, but I don't care. It's not that big of a deal to me because this is not a game I will be spending a huge amount of time playing. From there we move on to Lagoon, a top-down action-adventure role-playing game for Super Nintendo created by Kemco. I find it interesting that the protagonist of this game is named Nasir, because Nasir is famously one of the programmers for Secret of Mana, and you can actually find his name hidden in the game. If you do a certain combination of things, you will see it appear. So I don't know if that's just one hell of a coincidence, or if he was actually involved in the programming of this game in some way, but I do not see his name in the credits. All I know is that it was released in Japan December 12th, 1991, in North America around the same time, and it didn't come to the European Union until a full 2 years later. Now, we had a highly dramatic cutscene to start things off in what I would call the Inuyasha style of animation, where you get a close-up of somebody's face, they're looking at somebody else is looking at them, and then the camera pans across the picture without either of them actually moving any part of their bodies. It was a way that Inuyasha episodes padded out their animation. And I'm not knocking it because I like Inuyasha. It's just a very prototypical way to animate without animating. You just leave a still shot and sweep across the entire frame. But this guy is telling me to listen carefully, so maybe I should do that. He wants me to find out what the cause of the muddy water is in town, so I'm going to be going on some sort of epic quest here. If this reminds you of Wise 1 and 2, it certainly does me. It looks like the kind of bump role-playing game where instead of doing turn-based attacks, you simply run into the enemy and you take some of their health or they take some of yours. It's not everybody's favorite style of role-playing game, but I have no problem with it. I spent countless hours playing the first Wise game on Sega Master System as a kid. Got all the way to the end and couldn't beat it for some reason. I don't remember why, but I got stuck, and there were no such things as game facts or player's guides back then, so I really should go and revisit that at some point, find out what I didn't do to complete it, but I got very, very close. Coincidentally, the Wikipedia entry for this game also describes it as very similar to the early Wise games, so I think I'm onto something with that description. I'm going to move on though, because demonstrating the full assets of an RPG for a pickups video would take a very long time. So we're going now to Robocop vs. Terminator. If you're interested though, Lagoon goes for $14 loose. Not the most expensive of Super Nintendo RPGs, might be something you want to consider. Now this game is totally crazy go nuts. I've never seen this in any of the Terminator movies. I'm given to understand that there was a Robocop vs. Terminator comic book series that these games were based off of. But what this plot in the opening of the game is implying is that Robocop was the bridge between Skynet and global infiltration. They needed someone who was half human, half machine to begin with to interface with Skynet and take over the world. So John Connor believes that it is all the fault of Robocop. Wow. Just wow. That's bonkers, man. Imagine if they had actually made a movie out of that. Robocop was responsible for Skynet. You know what? I think I would actually pay good money to see that. I don't think they could get Peter Weller to play the part of Alex Murphy anymore, but man, what an idea. Imagine Robocop versus Sarah Connor one-on-one. It's not hard to see why they wanted to license this and make a video game out of it. I don't blame them in the least. I just want to play it on the premise alone. And I guess I'm not the only one who feels that way, because this is probably, if not the most expensive, the second most expensive next to Sonic Blast Man of my recent pickups. It does not come cheap, and you wouldn't expect it to with two major franchises like Robocop and the Terminator both involved in the same title. So get ready, because loose it goes for $17 complete. Oh, we jump up high here. Complete $85. And if you want it new and sealed, again, if you're that kind of insane and you've got Bill Gates money to spend, $680. Oh my God. You know what? If I had a sealed copy of Robocop vs. the Terminator, I'd sell that shit. I wouldn't care. I'd be happy to play a loose copy of it. I'd sell that shit and buy other video games, because for $680, Holy freaking crap, man. Just, there's no reason to keep it at that point. A loose cartridge, 16 bucks. Brand new sealed, 680 bucks. And you wonder why people fake seal video games and sell them on eBay. That's the kind of motivation that drives people to be scumbag seller of the week. Continually one of my favorite segments on Pat the NES Punk's CU podcast with Ian. So big shout out to both of them. This is basically a side-scrolling shinobi slash rolling thunder type game where you have an upper level and a lower level. You're shooting targets. You're traversing ladders. I can't get over these boxes, so I have to go this way. You get the idea. It's a basic side-scrolling shooter. It's fun. It's not the best, it's not the worst, but it gets the point across, as the Tribe Called Quest would say. So, I'll leave you with that. Now, here's a curious fact for you Super Nintendo collectors out there. As of the recording of this video, Alien vs. Predator goes for $21 loose, so it goes for more than Robocop vs. the Terminator, but complete, it goes for less. $79.99 for a complete in-box copy, and only $213 for one brand new. So I guess the demand either isn't as high, or the value of the two franchises, Robocop and the Terminator, is higher than the value of the Alien and Predator franchises. That's what the prices would suggest anyway. This is very interesting to me because I didn't expect I would be playing as the Predator, or that I would have his invisibility ability that I could just simply pick up as a power-up and then walk up to the aliens of the Aliens franchise and start smacking them around. So I'm kind of in love with this only a minute into the game. This is some good beat-em-up belt action fun. Double Dragon, Streets of Rage, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Simpsons, you get the idea. Anything where you would move up or down on a left to right horizontally scrolling plane and attack enemies that come toward you or come up from behind you. It may be a little bit of a button masher in that you just pick an attack and repeat, but there is variety thanks to the weapons that the aliens drop that you can pick up and use against them. And I do want to commend the sound design and the graphics. It is pixel 16-bit artwork, of course, but it looks very good for the time. If this was based on a comic book, I would go so far as to say it looks like it was ripped from the pages of the comic book. It has a very pleasing artistic feel. It seems that reception to the game, though, is quite mixed. Even though I'm enjoying it, it was not a big hit with everybody. It got as low as 33% from some reviewers, 15% out of 100. Yikes. On the other end of the spectrum, Power Unlimited gave it 83 out of 100, and Nintendo Power gave it 3 3/8 out of 5. So it's all over the map here. You either love or hate this game. There doesn't seem to be middle ground to find. I'm going to lean more towards the loving it side because even though it's a little simple in terms of challenge, the visuals and the absolute fun of being the Predator is hard to beat. I think maybe the reason some people are upset at this one is because there was an Alien vs. Predator arcade game, and I think that people wanted the gameplay of that arcade game and were disappointed at how different the home console version was. The negativity must stem largely from that, because if you judge this on its own merits and not compared to that famous arcade game from Capcom, I think you would be a lot happier. But you know, if you really want that arcade experience, either buy yourself a physical cab, spend $500 to $1,000, buy one of the reproduction cabs that they recently started making I believe there are 4 different Capcom belt action games in that one arcade cab, and Alien vs. Predator is one of them. Or your absolute last resort would be a multi-arcade machine emulator, either on your own personal computer, or you build a stand-up cab and load the ROMs and play it there. In the meantime, I think a Super Nintendo version of Alien vs. Predator that is not the same as Capcom but has its own unique charm is just fine by me. I wish there was one option in here that they didn't include. I'd like to flip the roles around. I'd like to play as the alien, like perhaps the mother alien that impregnated Ridley, and face off against a race of predators, go around trying to attach myself to them, do bad things to them, have face huggers and chest bursters and all sorts of creatures helping me in my role. I want to be the alien attacking the predator instead of the predator attacking the aliens. I think that would be a nice diversity of gameplay if you could switch the roles up. That was probably not possible within the limitations of a Super Nintendo cartridge. They only had so much RAM, they only had so much time, and the license was only going to let them do so much, so they probably had to design it exactly the way you see it, no more, no less. And that's also the reason it's been hard to port this game to home editions of compilations, classic arcade collections, and the like, because of the licensing costs of getting both Alien and Predator and getting everybody on board to agree with re-releasing it, which is why you're going to have to buy a full arcade cab if you really want that home experience. I'm Mr. MegaManFan. Thanks for watching.